Matt Locke, my friend. How are you doing today? Welcome to the Jacked Up Podcast.
John, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm doing really well, thank you. I'm down in sunny Australia. It is summer at the time of recording, and I got to say, life's pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Well, it's not summer here. I'm in the hills of West Virginia, and it's wintertime, and we don't have snow, but it's cold. So, but that's okay. I'm like a polar bear. I like the cold, so it works.
I'm a bit of a heat monkey, so yeah, no, all good, and we get our fair share of cold weather as well. It's not the barren desert that some people would think Australia is. We do get the seasons for sure.
Oh, well, that's good. That's good because I don't know about you, but I like really enjoy the change of seasons. My wife is a real big fan of Arizona, the desert. Not much change in season there, and I'm like, okay, well, yeah, if I don't see like spring and fall and get a little bit of snow around Christmas time, I'm not happy. So we're just going to move on.
That's funny you say that. My wife and I lived in Singapore for about 10 years.
Oh, yeah.
And whilst it was an amazing lifestyle there and it was fantastic in many ways, we really did learn to miss the seasons for sure.
Yeah.
It was just, you did have a wet season and a dry season, but that was about it. Otherwise, it's just hot and humid. Yeah, it's funny. I guess we know what we grow up with, right?
Right, exactly. And it's kind of funny and kind of leading into the conversation that we're going to have. A lot of people don't understand the fact that if you are in a spot where you don't have those change in seasons, it can actually throw off your circadian rhythms and cause all kinds of haywire with sleep patterns and everything else. So that's something that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, absolutely right. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So now we've started chit chatting, and I even forgot what we were going to do the podcast about. You are a global ambassador for everyday athletes, and I want you to get into your backstory. Tell us about what that means exactly and how you got into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the logical place to start is to explain by what I mean by everyday athlete, and I am absolutely the epitome of an everyday athlete. And for me, if you don't get paid to be an athlete, to do your sport, i.e. you're not a professional or elite athlete, then you're an everyday athlete. By default, it's the 9 to 5, it's the mums, the dads that go to work. They have life commitments. They try and squeeze in their training around life, let's say. And that's, at the end of the day, 99.99% of the global population. And so when I describe myself as a global ambassador for everyday athletes, I certainly went through, and I'm not going to talk about any sort of amazing life transformation or any of that kind of story, but I did nonetheless transition from a more sedentary, mediocre lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
And I transitioned into the world of, I guess, using fitness to benefit both my physical health and my mental health. And for me, that looked like triathlon at the time. And I never believed what started out as I guess, had you been with me, it was about, probably now, and you'd have seen me standing on the white sand, actually here in Jervis Bay. I mean, I really have come home to roost. Standing on the sand in Jervis Bay, and the sun was rising, and it's the most beautiful area. And we were watching the sunrise over the bay, and I had the most wicked hangover. And there I was, towing the line of a little baby triathlon, and I mean really a baby triathlon. Never done one before. It was like a 300-meter swim. Forgive me for metric. 300-meter swim, and it was, I think, an 8-kilometer ride on the bike, and then literally a 2-kilometer run. So it's tiny little, and it was designed for those to just give it a go. And I was standing as the sun rose higher, so I was wilting visibly. I could have shaved my tongue, to be honest. I just felt horrible.
Wow.
And that was my entry into the world of triathlon. And literally the gun went off, and unbeknownst to me, I got bashed and kicked and dunked and all sorts of things on the swim. I went hard, had no idea. It was my introduction to pacing, that being, I had no idea about pacing or what that meant. And I basically, by the time I was gassed, and I looked up and I thought I must be nearly there, and I wasn't even 1/3 of the way around yet. So to say that was a humbling experience would be an understatement. However, that was really a pivotal moment for me, and I went from ground zero in effect in terms of fitness and health. At the time, I liked beers. I'd started smoking again. like a muppet. And
Yeah.
that frustrated me that I'd started again after 10 years. And that really was the catalyst for change for me. It made me hungry for finding out what I was capable of.
Mhm.
And classic me, within 2 weeks, I think it was, of doing that baby triathlon, I'd signed up for my first full Ironman, which took place 9 months later. And the reason I'd done that is I knew that if I had something big to focus on,
Right.
that I would, at the end of the day, it would cause lifestyle change, which I felt was necessary.
Right.
And that's exactly what happened. And fear, an inner fear, became my biggest motivation, certainly for those 9 months. I didn't even own a bike at that point. And as you
Wow.
know, that the bike portion of an Ironman is
Mm-hmm.
112 miles,
Yeah.
on the back of a 2.6 mile swim, something like that. I'm trying to be in miles, and then a
Mm-hmm.
full marathon. So I think I proved to myself, and beyond that, and I'm happy to talk about it, of course, I fell
Mm-hmm.
into the world of long distance endurance racing. And
Right.
actually, that caused lifestyle changes. Like now, I've been plant-based for about 8 years. And in
Mm-hmm.
those 8 years, I've competed in some of the world's largest and most grueling ultra distance events. I've stood on the podium at some of them. And there's nothing special about me. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have any amazing athletic prowess. I wasn't born with some wondrous athletic genes. None of those things.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and therefore, I like to fly the flag for all of the other everyday athletes out there who
Mm-hmm.
are struggling to find time to train, maybe struggling to find motivation to train, maybe struggling with their diet, stress, sleep, all of the common issues that have become quite pervasive in modern society, such as disconnection,
Yeah.
depression, and certainly lifestyle diseases.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and disconnection is huge right now with everything going on. All last year with COVID and all that stuff. People are so disconnected. It's like the virtual world has become more prevalent than it ever was before. And if you sit back and you look 2 years ago, you would think, well, how could that be possible? But then COVID happens and everybody's sitting around and, Zoom and Skype and all these other things. And I was actually talking with a colleague today, and it's like, I'm going to be very, very interested to see the statistics when they get released, because typically you have anywhere from like a 6 to a 12% increase in obesity rates from year to year. That's how bad obesity is. But I'd be willing to bet that those rates doubled, if not tripled, last year because of so many people. Gyms were closed. They couldn't go to a gym. And rather than going outside and finding ways to exercise, they sat in, they emotionally ate and things of that nature. And I can just, the devastation that's going to come from that long term, I hate to think about, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a trend that we can see across most countries, certainly Western countries.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I and the team here are on a mission to try and combat through education, through leading by example, and
Right.
through I guess, often there's so much misinformation in the world. And I guess that's topical right now in different parts of the world. But in
Mm-hmm.
terms of what we eat, what we should eat, what we should drink, how we should, how much we should train, if for those who do train, for those who don't, why it's important. But we can always humans can put up barriers. We can create barriers, as we can create glass ceilings. And so what we're trying to do, and what I'm trying to do, is lower the barriers and get rid of those glass ceilings, because they are glass ceilings. And had you said to me 11 years ago, you'll stand on the podium at the race across America, if you'll stand on the podium at Ultraman Canada, I'd have just laughed at you.
Mm-hmm.
I was a bit overweight, started smoking again, probably drank a bit too much, and to even understand the term ultra distance racing would have been totally foreign to me. So again, there's nothing special about me. I just decided, to lean in, to lead by example, to take responsibility for my own habits,
Right.
my own routines, and that's certainly one of the leading messages in what we do. But again, it's about education. It's about getting people to stop being so hard on themselves and give
Yeah.
them an easier entry point. And let's set some mini goals and get some mini wins, because there's nothing more empowering.
No.
Um, if I'd started out by thinking, well, I'm going to go and do Ultraman Canada, from where I was, it would be unachievable
Right.
psychologically, not physically, but psychologically.
Mhm.
But I didn't. I did a half Ironman, a full Ironman. I did a number, and rather than just completing an Ironman, I started competing. Subtle difference at the Ironman, and trying to best my own time. I mean, I was never going to be competitive in my age group. I always considered I was competing with myself, and it's kind of the point, isn't it? Most of us really are
Yes.
just competing with ourselves in
Absolutely.
every
And that's
aspect of
actually
life.
the best thing to do. That's the best thing to do. I
Yeah,
tell people
yeah,
all the time, don't compare yourself to anybody else. Compare yourself to who you were last week, last month. If you're doing something to strive for a better life, whether it's and I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's health and fitness. I don't care if it's your career, whatever it is. If you're trying to improve your life, always compare yourself to who you were before you started, not who anybody else is. Because, it's just like with people and nutrition protocols and diets and stuff. You have so many people out here in the fitness world that are just handing out this cookie cutter stuff, and they're like, here, this is the diet that I give all my clients. I tell them all to eat 2,500 calories. So this is what you're going to eat. You're going to eat these foods, and you're going to do it at this time of day. And all of my other clients have fantastic results, so you are too. That's not going to work, because everybody is an individual. People process macronutrients differently for different reasons. All these things come into play. So to just say that, lump everybody into one category and say this is what should be done to achieve a goal, it's just not any good. And to your point that you were talking about earlier, I do have to disagree with you on one thing. There is something special about you. The reason I say that is this: there are the people that can just take a point in their life, whether it be, tragedy happens or something triggers something in their brain, and they decide to make change. And they can do that on their own without having to achieve, to reach out to help or anything like that. That is a rarity. Not many people can do that. There are people out there, but in comparison to the people that need a little coaching, need a little education and stuff like that, the numbers are vastly different. So, in that respect, yeah, there is something special about you for sure.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. And look, as you know, one of the things that I took the opportunity of doing during COVID 2020, and I'm conscious it's still going, which is why I defined it by year, is I wrote a book called Lead by Example. And this
Mm-hmm.
is how to harness human potential, both in work but in life. And it's wrapping up all of my experiences so far. And I got the of interviewing and with a whole bunch of subject matter experts,
Right.
and condensed it into a very consumable format in a book and an audio book. And um,
Mm-hmm.
the intent is to, exactly as the subtitle would suggest, to harness human potential. And uh, you're right, not all of us have that moment in our life. I think we all have the ability, but maybe we don't recognize that moment when it comes, or we don't feel
Mm-hmm.
empowered sufficiently when we stumble across that moment, let's say. And so my intention with this book is to create greater awareness within each person that reads it,
Mm-hmm.
to give them all sorts of tips, tricks, and techniques for when that moment arrives, how to go about it, or how to even take baby steps in any of the subjects around your environment, whether it's your training, your diet, sleep, and the like. Just making a lot of information that isn't necessary. It's readily available somehow, but it's all over the place. So I've tried to put it all in one place. And it's very much a
Mm-hmm.
playbook for life, really. That's the intention of it. And look, as with most books, unless you're J.K. Rowling, you're not going to become wealthy by selling books. And that's not the intention here. And in fact,
No.
half of the profits from every single book sale, I'm going to be donating to Lifeline Australia, which is all about mental health and suicide. It's the national helpline
Mm-hmm.
for people in their darkest moments. That's the number they call. And so for
Right.
sure, half of the profits from this book will go directly to them. For me, it's not
That's
about making the
amazing.
money. I want to get the message out there. And look, when during this conversation, I'd love to share as well. There's one chapter in particular which certainly with our test readers has proven really interesting. It's called For the Ladies, and at the right time we can drop into that subject, but it's all
Hmm.
about the more, I guess, the 5 life stages of and how that of a female, and how that pertains in the sports health and fitness realm, let's say, but for everyday athletes. And it deals
Right.
with some of the it captures a lot of information which isn't common knowledge. They don't teach it at school.
Hmm.
It's not been handed down through the generations, because historically the science hasn't been understood, and it's all been a bit too taboo, and don't talk about that. And
Right.
that's a chapter, in fact, that we're making freely available.
Hmm.
You can just go and download it, and the idea is you share it. And if you read it and go, wow, I didn't know that, I didn't know that. In fact, I had to laugh. One of our test readers messaged me back, and she said, you were right about chapter 4 for the ladies. She said, like, love it.
Hmm.
Brilliant. She said, I now understand why I'm a cranky bitch all the time. Her words.
That's
Her
awesome.
words.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
um,
I think it's really important. The title of the book, in and of itself, is extremely important. It's a concept that so many people don't grasp, and they really should. Especially if, like, you're a parent first and foremost.
yeah.
We deal with situations right now. Like, there's a generation of children that are obese. Childhood obesity has gone through the roof in the last 15 years. And the reason is it's because their parents came from that generation that sat around on Saturday mornings eating sugary cereal and watching cartoons, because we were all
Mm.
told that we needed to be eating more grains and not be eating healthy fats and things of that nature. So those habits that were ingrained in that generation by society and everything else that was going on has translated to, we literally have a generation of kids, and it doesn't help that everything is video games this and video games that. So they don't go outside. They're not active, and parents need to do something. They really do. And I say that because if you look at the term type 2 diabetes, type 2 diabetes 20 years ago was not called type 2 diabetes. It was called adult onset diabetes. And the reason it was called that was because typically adults would become less active and less tended, pay less attention to what they were eating as they got older, and they would start to develop insulin resistance. Well, now, because kids are less and less active, and parents are like, sure, whatever you want to eat, knock your socks off, because then they don't have to mess with cooking. Now you've got kids that are developing diabetes when that didn't used to be the case. It used to be kids were only diabetic if they were born with it. So you have to ask yourself, when does it sink into the parents that you need to lead by example? You need to show your kids. It's like me. I am not going to eat a bunch of junk on a regular basis because I have kids, I have grandkids. I don't want to show them that it's okay. I don't want to show them a dad and a granddad that's unhealthy and can't get out in the yard and play with him if he wants to, and things like that. It's all about leading by example. But now let me ask you, obviously the title of the book is Lead by Example. What what are the basic concepts? Kind of give me an overview of what the book is targeting that leadership on. Is it just leadership in life? Is it leadership in business? Is it leadership in family? Just kind of give me a little overview on that.
Yeah, sure. Well, the subtitle is Harnessing Human Potential at Work and in Life. And so I think typically most people, if you talk about leadership, most people would think about the business setting, and they think about automatically about hierarchy. And for sure, to organize most companies, you have to have a certain hierarchy, otherwise it would be chaos. Even the most modern, funky companies still have some form of hierarchy, and that's just a way of being organized. But I don't think of leadership in that way, and certainly here, lead by example is not intended that way. We live in a world, it's an amazing world. pandemic aside, it's an amazing world. And you mentioned as well, the disconnection for kids and the digital era, whilst amazing, it does have a dark side, no question. And I mentioned already these sort of deadly dangers that it brings with it, that are disconnection, depression, and, as you were talking about, lifestyle diseases. So what I'm trying to achieve with the book, and I will answer your question, is basically for humans. I want humans to flourish. We need humans in every society to flourish so that we can realize our collective potential. And I believe that we all have a responsibility to lead in every aspect of our life. So yes, at work, it doesn't matter where you sit in the organization chart, it's irrelevant. You have a sphere of influence over everyone around you. And it's not necessarily even people that you interact with. It's people who may see how you behave. They may observe some of your habits. Everything we do is observed, most of the time is observed or witnessed by others, and we have an influence over them. And therefore we have a responsibility to be accountable for that and to make sure that we are leading by example in every aspect of our life. So the same is true at work. The same is true at home, for sure. The same is true if you train, if you're in a team, or you go to the gym, or whatever you do, every aspect of your life. If we all led by example, imagine what a magical place this world would be. And certainly in a work environment. And look, we've introduced a new program. So I run a company called the Bay Games, and we're all about harnessing human potential. Yeah, so we have functional fitness competitions called the Bay Games, which is an in-person event here in Jervis Bay. We have an global online event where last year we had athletes, or everyday athletes, from 48 countries taking part over a 3-week period. But we've just recently introduced, given the context of leading by example, and then understanding our audience, who are everyday athletes,
right.
By default, where are our everyday athletes? 70% of their life, they're at work. Sure. Now, we see the magic that occurs in our competitions just at the gym every day. I mean, I train every day for sure, and the magic that you see, the connection, the camaraderie, you sweat and suck together, but you smile together. You create bonds unlike other bonds. It's a really magical experience, and it might not be particularly glamorous or noteworthy each and every day, but those friendships and that connection are really important. And it's funny, you take those same people and put them into a work environment, and that magic rarely occurs. So what we've created to try and combat that, particularly in understanding where the world is in terms of the pandemic and even more dispersed and displaced workforce, is that we've created a program called the Wellness Warriors Program, and it's a done-for-you workplace wellness program for in-person remote teams. And what we're doing there, and I think in terms of giving people the opportunity to lead by example and harness the human potential within the businesses, and I feel quite passionate about it, because as an ex-corporate, I was in corporate for 20 plus years, and I saw so much wasted talent, so much potential that just wasn't realized. So many colleagues that were ticking along giving 60, 70%, and imagine if everyone gave 100%, how awesome that would be. So we're taking the magic of what we normally do, and we're bringing it into the workplace environment and creating it in sort of team environments, teams of 3, 4, and 5. And that's really important, because human connection is such a fundamental need for all of us. And we're certainly encouraging those within that program. There's a common theme throughout. It's about leading by example. And we give them the opportunity each week. There's 4-week cycles, and we go through it. We have a formula called CALS, and it's week 1 focuses on communication. Week 2 is about accountability, leadership. Week 4, strategy. But and even though we do have a fitness component in there, it's not a fitness program. It is all about engagement, employee engagement, human connection, community connection, conversation, which of course, not only if you have a happy, healthy workforce, you have a productive workforce. Absolutely. But as well, by using fitness as the glue to bring all of that together, naturally we're getting endorphins flushing around the body. We're promoting physical fitness. For sure, mental health is improved because of the endorphins, because of the movement, because of the connection. So those are the 3 boxes we're seeking to tick with that. But we're promoting and encouraging and fostering a culture of leading by example.
Yeah, that is so powerful. First of all, I really like how you are doing the teams within the workplace. Um, I am huge on if you are working with a group of people and you're trying to achieve a goal, there has to be that mesh. There has to be that connection within the different components of the team. And if there isn't, it's I tell people all the time, it's like, if you take a Rubik's cube and you take one of the cubes away, guess what? The puzzle's not complete. So it's a matter of realizing that finding ways that you can work together and gel like that are really, really important. And you're right, it does increase productivity and everything else. Now, I did notice, I think I read somewhere in the book or whatnot, where you coined this phrase, be brave and have fun. Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. That's certainly on the. It might not be that clear. I can hear it for anyone viewing this on YouTube or wherever. Be brave and have fun can just be seen. But the book is called Lead by Example, but it's on the front cover for a reason. And look, in our experience, we have a lot of now everyday athletes who have, in years before, watched on the sidelines and gone, oh, wish I could do that, and actually watched it and realized when they feel the environment and see the experience and realize that they can. And therefore, being brave, we have to be brave. I mean, there's no question. We all have fears, whatever they are. We all have little gremlins that keep us awake at night sometimes, or stop us from participating in something, whatever it is. And often fear is debilitating for many people. And look, I have my own fears. I talked about the fear I created for myself by signing up for my first Ironman event.
Right.
But it's how we use that fear. And for me, therefore, taking that fear and turning it into a determination to be brave, to lean in, step up, and get out of the comfort zone. Because very little good happens in the comfort zone. We get fat and squishy in the comfort zone, both metaphorically and literally.
Yeah.
So certainly to be brave is an important trait, but also having fun. At the end of the day, if we're having fun doing something, we're more likely to do it. That's the bottom line. And so everything we try, and I talked about the magic that we see, we create the platform for people to create the magic and experience the magic. And this is having fun at the end of the day. And so, again, by bringing that into the workplace, not that many people have fun in the workplace. That doesn't mean everyone hates it, but it's not normally associated with fun.
Yeah.
And so, again, that's what we're trying to encourage and foster. So be brave, have fun, and by default, lead by example. So, that's certainly... That's on the cover of the book, and that's a little bit the basis behind it, and that's really very much. Actually, if I turn around for your viewers, they can probably.
Yep, sure can.
You can see it's on the back of my T-shirt as well, right? So I mean, it really is an inherent.
Right.
It's a fundamental belief system, I suppose. But you asked earlier about what are the nuts and bolts of the book, and it's not so much about promoting the book as, I guess, walking people through how to be brave, have fun, and lead by example. Right. And certainly, within the book we have chapter 1, for example, dictates performance. And I think that really speaks to what you've been talking about, the Saturday morning, sitting around eating sugary cereals, staring at some form of screen, whether it's a phone, a tablet, whatever it is.
Right.
And that really does start with awareness. It really does. And our environment dictates our performance. That's as much a statement as it is the name of a chapter. And in fact, that chapter starts with the end, because actually it's a fairly profound statement as it is the name of a chapter. But certainly it's absolutely true, whether it's at work or play, whatever environment we find ourselves in. And look, sometimes we don't create that for ourselves, right? But there's often more we can do to change or impact our environment than we perhaps realize. And it starts with having awareness. Yeah. And that chapter is all about exactly that. It's, I think someone described it as like simple, so painfully simple to implement. As in, I kind of knew all that, but God, the way you put it down, I can't hide from it.
Right.
It put it back on the table, and it made me realize that actually, okay, I know
Hmm.
some of this stuff, if not all of it, and now I have to take myself. But we talk about the power of people as well, which is what we've touched on already. When I talk
Hmm.
about the magic that we create at our competitions, our events, and in
Hmm.
our programs, it's the same. Whether you play soccer at the weekend, whether you train at a gym, and any sort of team sport, or where you're training or doing something with other people, that's where we're talking about harnessing the human potential. There's so much potential in all that is unrealized, and it's not. But I think the one thing we can do, the most powerful thing we can do as an individual,
Hmm.
is to realize our own power and therefore lead by example and set an example to those around us. And it's
Right.
empowering. I mean, how do you feel? Think about it. When's the last time you met someone that you just bounce off?
Hmm.
And they don't have to be the happy sort of rah rah, full on Tony Robbins guru. They don't. They're not that at all. But
Hmm.
they're upbeat. They're positive. It's a good message. They're giving energy, not taking energy, and it
Yeah.
feels good. Well, who wouldn't want to be that person?
Hmm.
And this is not about some. I'm not talking here about putting on a facade of everything in the world is wonderful. Far from it.
Yeah.
It can be when you're lying in a sweaty mess on the floor of the gym, rather than going, "Oh, that hurt." That can be go, "Oh, that was awesome." Like brutal but awesome. I'm glad I did that. Different
Right.
messages, right?
Yeah.
So that really, the power of people is just such an untapped resource globally.
It is. It is. Now let me ask you, when you're working with, a team in a workplace or something like that, how critical to the success of everything that you're trying to do in the workplace, how critical is mindset to that whole thing? How much, what are some of the things that you do to try to change people's concrete mindsets that, oh, well, this is the way things should be done, and this is the way that I could be most effective, when in fact that's not actually not the case?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, mindset is so fundamental for everything we do, right? It's so
Hmm.
important, and so there are a number of ways we address that. If anyone who studied positive psychology would have heard of the self-determination theory, and actually we've underpinned our program for the workplace with making sure we tick the boxes, um, what the self-determination theory is, and it all starts. And I'll come back to that, but it all starts with um, one of the key parts of the self-determination theory is that people make a choice. They're choosing to do what they're doing. And
Right.
so even in a gym environment, if someone goes
Hmm.
and does a class at 6 o'clock in the morning, well, they've made the choice that they've selected the time, the day, they've chosen to go and do it. That in itself is quite empowering. So interestingly, with the workplace program, well, you can't force your workers or your employees to participate. You can't make them.
Hmm.
Certainly not in most Western countries, and we wouldn't want people to be forced to do it anyway. So, and that's kind of the point. So, when we onboard our company, we typically do a live event. We do a live broadcast, and
Hmm.
it's it's a bit of a sales campaign, really, or a marketing campaign, I should say,
Right.
where we seed it, we drip feed, we get people excited about it. We then go live and we
Hmm.
launch it and we tell it, and we make sure that they understand it's for. I mean, some people think about a weekly team fitness challenge and they shrink away from it. They go, "Oh, I couldn't do that," and
Hmm.
so we understand that, and so we have to make it clear that it's for any age, any ability, it can be done anywhere, anytime. And
Hmm.
we give an example of that. If for example, one of them, and they're all body weight workouts with accessory equipment like jump ropes and resistance bands and so on, we
Sure.
provide all of it.
Hmm.
But we've got our head of a coach called Team have just done an amazing job with the programming, and so unlike with our more traditional Bay Games sort of functional fitness event,
Hmm.
in the workplace program, the Warriors program, um, if we program, let's say, 10 push-ups as part of the challenge, if you can't do push-ups, we can do them from your knees. If you can't do them from
Right.
your knees, do them off the desk. If you can't do them off the
Hmm.
desk, stand against the wall and do them off the wall. So every single movement has got a scaling option. so that it's accessible to everyone. If you can't do an air squat, well, sit down on your chair and stand up again. There you go.
Yeah.
That'll do. And so on. So we make it very accessible, and therefore every single participant that comes on board, they've chosen to do it. And that's a critical first step. They've made the choice to do it. They might have needed convincing. We might have had to demonstrate how it really is for you. It's okay. You know, you're not going to get hurt. You're not going to get embarrassed. It's not, none of those things. It's going to be fun, actually.
Right.
Brave. And that's part of what we talk about. That's where some of that language comes in. So that's the first step. And that's an important step for the self-determination theory to be met. Now, where that also comes into is, and again, creating the magic. I mean, if you think about a gym environment, a class at least, in an F45 or a CrossFit gym, for example, well, then we know what the workout is. We're all doing the same workout or the same challenge, as we would call it in the Warrior program. So now we have this unification. We have a common goal. We're all aligned.
Right.
And that's, again, that's important. And we know the parameters, measurable. It's measurable in terms of either you've got to do a certain number of repetitions, or it might be for the fastest time, and there's a clock. It's measurable. And that's, again, really important for the human psychology of it all. And again, we're all in the same boat. So those are some of the key factors for our Warrior program that help people to manage mindset, because we've already now changed their state to a certain extent, and that's important. And not everyone has awareness about change of state and what state they're in, and it's hard to recognize the state you're in unless you've been trained or it's brought to your attention. So what we're actually doing is changing people's state for good.
Right.
And you can change people's state in a sales environment in a cunning way, using all sorts of NLP type techniques that can be used for, let's say, for commercial gain. Well, here we're doing a lot of that, but for the good of the participants, and importantly, the community that they are part of. So those are some of the key steps. Without even talking to them about mindset, we're helping to pre-frame everything so that their mindset is positioned in a certain way. And then we really handle it through the delivery mechanism. You know, it is fun. People have a ball. You know, any of the barriers that are put up, they come tumbling down, and very quickly people are having that actually fall. Previously, people who are not competitive or would say they're not competitive suddenly are getting quite competitive about it in a good way. And that's just amazing. And we see some amazing results. And certainly, in the most pure sense, the way we advise companies that come on board with us in terms of how to use it. Let's say you've got a team of 3. And for sure, all 3 of them could be from a single department within that business. No problem. You can do it that way. Of course you can. But imagine the magic if you had one of them from marketing, one of them from logistics, and one from accounting.
Yeah.
So not necessarily relations that would be fostered in the deeper sense. You're now giving them the opportunity to create some magical bonds. And really break down internal barriers, silos. If businesses are still organized that way, it just breaks all of that down. And that's really the most pure way, certainly we believe, of implementing the Warrior program. And that's for sure where we see the best results. But again, we've gone for teams of 3 to 5, deliberately not pairs, even though we have a pairs event, the Grand Slam, and we love it. And I love training and competing in pairs. We've deliberately gone for minimum 3 in the team, because 2 can be cliquey. You can have one dominant personality.
Yes.
Whereas as soon as you add the extra person in, and now you've got 3, 4, or 5, then it changes the dynamics of the way people have to communicate. The complexity of how to organize yourselves for some of the weekly challenges. Those, long answer, but a great question, by the way. Love the question.
Yeah. Well, see, I'm fascinated by human potential, because I believe, in the work that I do with helping people get healthy, nutrition, exercise, and stuff like that, I believe that so much of what ails society today doesn't have to be corrected by medicine, doesn't have to be corrected by, I literally, through running through a situation in my own life, I came to the realization after talking to a couple different neurologists that you can literally develop a seizure disorder from having childhood trauma. Childhood trauma that has never been dealt with can lay dormant for years and years and years, and you can become an adult, and all of a sudden, for no explainable reason, your mind starts to go into this fit, and you start having seizures. So when you think about how everything is connected like that, which I talk so much on this podcast because I'm trying to get people to understand that when it comes to potential, wellness potential, workplace potential, all these different things, everything in your life is connected. It is all connected, and it's all about finding that balance. I myself, it's like one of the things that I've learned over the last few years is that because I do so many different things, my mind has a tendency to run over top itself. And I find that I have to take a few minutes, center myself. I'll put on some meditative music or binaural beats or something like that, dim the lights down in my studio, burn incense and things of that nature. And it just recenters me back to where I can focus more on what it is that I'm trying to do. So that's why I always ask people about the mindset, because it is so key. But now, you're a big proponent of, the importance of community and human connection. Obviously, we've already touched on that. What do you think some of the challenges are going to be in the next few years from the community aspect when everything has become so distant and virtual?
Yeah, look, I think actually, I mean, I always, I have my dark moments like the rest of us, but I'm generally an optimistic guy. And I actually like to believe that the pandemic, there are some upsides to the pandemic. And I would say certainly here in Australia, we saw during last year, and it's certainly enduring so far, that it gave people more awareness of the importance of community, being, that sense of community, that sense of connection. As soon as you can't have something that you take for granted, it raises awareness of it. So the fact that most of us at some stage, if not still currently, are in isolation or quarantine, and are not able to travel, can't, I haven't been to the UK to see my parents. By the time I see them, it may well be 3 or 4 years since I physically last had contact with them, let's say. And that makes you think about it. And I think the same is true here when it comes to being part of a community. And that could literally be the society you live in, your neighbors, your work colleagues, co-workers. If you do go to the gym or in a team of some description, sports and fitness, anything like that. I believe that the increased awareness actually to more deliberate movement towards it. I think people will go, I understand the importance of it now. I really missed that, and will make more effort, more conscious effort to seek it out. I believe that. In the same way that I think, when we look at some of the numbers around COVID at the moment, question that from medical science is showing, and statistics are sadly showing already, where obesity doesn't go in your favor if you contract COVID-19. It's definitely a downside. It's a disadvantage. And I think the statistics are so obvious that, again, I like to believe that more people will therefore have their health brought into focus and the importance of wellness. And if it takes pandemics for some people, let's take this. Let's take the wins when we get them. And I don't wish us to have a pandemic, obviously. But if there's some good can come out of it, then fantastic. And I believe that will be one of them. That more people are already understanding the need to make some lifestyle changes, whether that's diet, whether that's training, fitness, sport, or both, and all of the other components of life. So, I believe. I like to believe that will be the case. And I'd just like to mention as well, you talked about wellness, and look, I think these days wellness in general is a term that's kind of bandied around. It's a bit cliche, especially at the moment, because wellness, it has been put up on a pedestal more than normal, and I appreciate that for example. But when we talk about wellness, we're talking about we actually measure it within the Warriors program, and the 6 categories that we measure it. We've got a digital scorecard that all participants do, and here, just for the listeners who might not be able to define wellness, they kind of understand what it means. And the same was for me. Was, by the way, I really had to be educated about what wellness can be, how to define that. And the 6 categories here, just to give some guidance, I suppose, it's around emotions, relationships, our sense of meaning, our levels of engagement, our sense of accomplishment, and of course our physical health. And if we think about those 6 categories, they're highly relevant at home, at work, with our mates, with our extended family, emotions, relationships, meaning, engagement, accomplishment. They really are relevant. So wellness is very much a holistic way of considering our own lives.
Absolutely.
And every aspect of it.
Yep, absolutely. And that's why, when I first started my coaching business, I just called it T2 Nutrition because, my main specialty is nutrition. And, so it's like I wanted to help people not have to worry about, struggling with, dealing with, or reversing type 2 diabetes. But then I started this podcast. And when I started the podcast and I started to talk to so many different people, I realized that wellness is just like to your point, it's a very, very broad topic. It's all encompassing: mind, body, spirituality, all these different things, like you're saying, connection and all of these components go together to create that umbrella of wellness. And so many people need to start focusing on all of the things besides what everybody thinks of right off the bat, which is nutrition and exercise and your health. And they need to start focusing on some of these areas like we have already talked about throughout the podcast. And I think what's going to happen is when people finally make that shift and they start focusing in some of those other areas, we're going to see wellness increase. Now, you were talking about obesity a few minutes ago. I think the latest numbers came out the second week of January, I believe it was, and the CDC said 48% of the world's population is obese. Those are some incredible numbers. And then when you look at the causation of obesity, so many things happen from being obese: diabetes, heart disease. You're more likely to get cancer. You just like you said, COVID hits you much harder if you're obese. And obesity is a choice for at least 90% of the population, I'll say. And that might be wrong. It's not a statistic, but I'm going to say about 90% of the population, they're obese by choice because they can change it. There are some people that have thyroid conditions and other things that cause them to gain weight, and there's not a lot they can do about it. And I get that. But you're the one that's picking up the donuts. You're the one that's picking up the Twinkies and the Ho-Hos and the potato chips and eating them. And then you want to sit back and you want to act like a victim when you're obese. You have a choice. And if you can't, if you can't make that choice on your own, reach out to a professional that can help you, because that's what people get into this business for. It's not all about making money. I created my business because I want to help as many people as possible. It's why I started a podcast and started making videos and all these other things. But it all comes down to you. Whether you're trying to tap into your human potential like you've been discussing throughout the show, whether you're trying to improve your health, whatever it is, it all comes down to you. You've got to make the choice, and then you've got to make the effort.
And I don't want to be too one-eyed about it. By the way, I agree with everything you're saying, and I think you're doing an amazing job. And I have the greatest respect for people like yourselves who have educated themselves to such a level to be able to really help people make life changes, let's say. But I like to help people as you do. But one of the ways I think I help people is by reframing it. I don't make it about them. Think about the title of the book, Lead by Example.
Right.
So if you follow that philosophy in its truest form, it takes the spotlight off yourself. It's not about you. It's about the people around you.
Yeah.
It's about the impact you have on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be too controversial, and I hope your audience doesn't mind, but when I see overweight, like really obese children, how's that not how's that not cruelty? How's that acceptable? I mean, it's ridiculous to me. And what goes through my mind is I don't judge them. I don't judge their parents. I genuinely, what I think is, they're just being set up to fail. Like the health issues that they are going to have, the social stigmas that they're going to carry with them.
Right.
You know, it's just, that's what I think of. It's not about them. It's about them leading by example with their children, the next generation. Like take it up a level, chunk it up a bit. And that I find it much easier then to take responsibility for my actions when I think about it in that way. I don't think about it as me. I think about it as those around me, those in my bubble, actually, is what I call it in the book. We all operate in a little bubble.
Right.
And all the people that we interact with in our life, they're all in our bubble at some point. And I think about it that way. And I think, well, okay, because I want to know why Twinkies can't be a superfood. I mean, come on.
Well, they do have like the longest shelf life of just about anything out there. So I don't know if you want to call that being super, but you know,
it doesn't need to be refrigerated.
You could just throw the box on the shelf, and 15 years from now, eat it, and it's just like it was on day one. I've got to say on that note, I never thought about it before, but knowing what I know now and knowing the fact that something like that exists, that they can make a food that will last that long, what in the hell would make you want to eat something like that? Because you know they've got some stuff in it that has no business in your body.
Absolutely.
I don't get it. I just don't get it. All right, my friend. Well, we're just about out of time. So let me ask you to leave us with one thought. Typically, I ask a question basically focused around health and fitness, but in your case, you know, everything that you're doing and the work that you're doing is so much more encompassing than that. If you could leave all the listeners with one little thought that's going to plant a seed in their brain to cause them to reach out and try to reach their utmost potential, what would it be?
Ask yourself today, in your day, did you give 100% in everything that you did? And if you didn't, what do you think the impact is on those around you who are watching and listening to everything you say and do? And of course, imagine the potential that lies in giving 100% and allowing those around you to be empowered to do the same and to flourish. Imagine how amazing that would feel and what we could achieve. So, I think that's where and obviously I'd sign off by saying, look, be brave in everything you do, have fun, and make sure that you lead by example.
Powerful, powerful stuff. You know, so many times you've made references to different terms in your book and whatnot. And I'm a big music fan, and I was born and raised on country and western music. Tim McGraw is a country and western singer, and he recorded a song many years ago, and it was all about him kind of paying attention to interactions with his child. He was driving down the road and he hit a bump, and the kid spilled his soda and the kid cussed, and he asked his son, he's like, "Where'd you hear that kind of language from?" And he's like, "I'm watching you. I'm watching you." You know, and that really struck home with me, because at the time that song was out, my oldest son was still, I'm going to say he's probably like 5-6 years old, and he's 30 now. So, you know, but at that time he was still young, and it really made me stop and think, you know, all my kids, you know, even my nieces and nephews and whatnot, they're watching me. They're watching everything that I do. So
absolutely.
I need to be the best person I can be so they can be the best person they can be.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, before we run, let everybody know where they can reach out and connect with you if they want to work with you, whether it's a company that wants to get involved with your warrior program or just somebody that wants to reach out.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. So I think the easiest is to go to thebaygames.com. So the Bay, B-A-Y, games.com. Everything's on there. That's certainly a point you can reach out and get in touch with me. For anyone who's interested to grab themselves a copy of the Lead by Example book, we've made it even easier. You can go to leadbyexamplebook.com and you can get a copy there. And be sure, again, half of the profits are going to Lifeline Australia, the suicide prevention service. So it's really not about me making a book, let me tell you. But I know, based on our test readers, there's a whole bunch of good stuff in there. And someone described it as everyone on the planet should read this book. And of course, I would appreciate that very much for the good that it can bring. So thebaygames.com is probably the easiest way, or leadbyexamplebook.com.
Fantastic. All right, my friend, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to hop on the show with me. This has been an amazing conversation. I've really, really enjoyed it. Your mindset around the work that you do is phenomenal. I think that more people need to pick up on this philosophy of leading by example. But to be quite honest, the be brave and have fun stands out to me more than anything, because so many people are afraid to just let loose and have fun. And if you're and you normally don't associate bravery, somebody having to be brave to have fun. All right, guys. Matt was an awesome guest. I love talking about his book and all of the things in it. I am all about doing anything and everything that you can to increase your potential, to tap into that human potential and be everything that you can possibly be. So with that being said, do me a favor. If you like the episode, share it, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell. You know the deal. Do all that stuff. And until I see you again, you guys know my motto. Playtime's over. It's time to go to work.